Hey, everybody. Welcome to Almost 30.
Hi, welcome to the show. It's Lindsey. It's Krista. We're so glad you're here.
Checking out our new branding.
Check it out on YouTube. We have our new logo.
We have our new logo. We have our new colors. I think the last time we updated branding was 2021 or 2020. No, 2020 maybe.
No, I think it was
2019?
No. I think it was like 2021. I think you're right.
Okay. Because I remember we had a merch shoot and the merch had the new logo and branding.
It did?
Yeah.
Are you really?
Yeah,
Like
it
the
had
merch?
The new vibe. Yeah. I just remember it was all in the same time. And I know that was post around 2020 time.
Interesting.
I know. Because we had the whole studio set up and
Crazy.
I know.
We did the most during 2020. We're like, hey, we're going to go to Miami. Hey, we're going to do a merch tour. Hey.
It's like, hey, the world is crumbling.
We're going to start a membership. We're going to do camp.
We got merch. You guys are home. I remember March 2020 when everything shut down and being so relieved.
Yeah, totally.
I was like, they were like 2 weeks to stop the spread. I was like, this is going to be an amazing break and I was painting and I canceled everything that year because I think we were doing 100 things and I remember feeling relieved.
Did we have a tour planned? I actually don't remember.
We did.
2020, yeah. Had to cancel that.
Because we did toured in 2018 and 2019, I guess. Maybe 2017, I forget.
Yeah, 2018.
And 2019. I know 2019 we did our retreat. And we were we had retreats planned. In 2020.
Yeah, that's right. In September or something or August. Yeah, wow. What trips me up too is like people that I know that had babies during that time have 5-year-olds now. Isn't that so weird?
That's insane.
I don't know why that trips me up so much. I'm like, it was 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Yo, that's crazy.
That was... but I want to talk a little bit about what we were talking about before we started rolling. So sometimes when Lindsey and I are in studio, we kind of get into some juicy things that we want to talk about when we're recording.
Yeah.
And this was related to the episode and the conversation. And you were talking about bids for connection.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really, I was so fascinated by this when I was talking to Jared. I see it in my life a lot. I see it in me a lot where like I desire connection, whether it's with my husband, whether it's with a friend, with family, but the way in which I bid for it is not clear and direct and actually asking for connection. It's usually this like roundabout way that I think places some of the onus on the other person to like kind of give me the green light and then I'll go in. So for example, if my husband's working from home, say he has his office at home, if I peek in and I'm like, say it's a Saturday and he's, he defaults to work quite a bit. And I'm like, hey babe, how many more hours of work do you have? When what I really would like to say is like, I would love to spend time with you in a little bit. Like, what's your plan? Like, what can I look forward to like later this afternoon? What feels like good and realistic? Because oftentimes when I ask him how many hours of work he has left or something like that, he'll kind of look at me, like knowing that I actually want to ask to hang out or if we have something going on. So he always like kind of picks up on the subtext, but doesn't actually ask for the subtext necessarily. He kind of wants me to like come to that. So in this conversation with Jared, it was just so enlightening because I'm like, you know what, my relationships deserve that that clarity and that vulnerability. I think it's really vulnerability.
Yeah. I think it is the vulnerability. I think also too, on the other end, the relationship, the person helping you to see above what you're saying.
Yeah.
So also being like, oh, I see her trying to connect with me.
Yes.
Like it's like both. It's like you being aware of your own bids and then them being aware of the bids.
Yes.
But I think bids for connection is so important. And I'm so grateful we're talking about this because in relationships in life, I mean, think about as a child, when we talk about inner child work and we talk about working with our inner child or inner child healing, so much of what we're healing is the bids of connection that were not met.
Yes.
The bid for connection for eye contact, the bid for connection for touch, wanting more of our parents' attention. Like that's where we lost trust. and where we broke that ability to be vulnerable. Because as a child, you were so vulnerably asking for them to help you, support you, be with you. And then when you get older, you're like, the only way I can protect myself when asking for connection is by being like, hey, are you still working? Like,
Yeah, of course.
because then you're like, this will protect me. If I'm not clear, because I've been clear when I was younger, then I'm going to get, maybe if I don't get what I want, then it's on them.
Yes.
It's like their
and it's
problem.
like this fear of rejection sometimes
Yes.
too. Now we can actually, it's been nice because sometimes I'll just like introduce a concept and go to an extreme and be like, hey, I'm going to tell you when I'm like making a bid for connection. You
That's
could tell
a good
me.
one. I love that.
And it just makes it almost like so obvious, like kind of not a joke, but like just between us kind of like okay, I can tell you're making a bid for connection. And then over time, it like kind of smooths out where it becomes more clear and less clunky. But if I think about like Mav, I mean, I'm so conscious of like, if he says mommy and he's like reaching up for me to pick him up, and say he comes in from the other room and I'm like on my phone, like putting my phone down right away, making sure that I'm making eye contact. Or when he comes back from being out with our nanny Nicole for a while and I open the door, like that reunion with him is so important. And I'm just really, really mindful of that, because I think we think, well, kids are young, they're not going to remember, this doesn't matter, and we kind of like make past those moments so quickly, but they are so important. They're like being imprinted in their little brains.
I just laugh at like that mentality of like, they're young, they're dumb, they don't remember. You're like, what?
But so many people feel that way. It's psychotic.
Gabor Mate says if you do 0 to 3 right, you're good for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
I'm like, I think my life was opposite. I think 0 to 3 was disaster. And then I think older is, you know what I mean? You're like, not disaster, but, it wasn't a disaster at all. But I think that our generation is now seeing the importance of that time for the bids for connection. And I think in romantic relationships, important. In friendships, that's important. You know what I mean? And I do think it is, the more you can be in touch with yourself and be like, what do I need right now in this situation? I remember with someone that I was dating previously who was working a lot. And now I know a bid for connection. And I was like, I didn't realize that's what I was wanting when I was wanting them to work less, or I was wanting to spend more time with them, or even to have, even date nights are bids for connection. I'm wanting to connect outside of the home. I'm wanting to connect in a different way. Like I'm wanting to, because oftentimes when you're at home with a partner, it doesn't feel as connected because you're kind of always in that energy. And so there's an intentionality of a connection that feels so different. So invitation for our audience to really think about, the bids for connection that they have in their life when they're wanting to connect with people.
100%. We also talked about trust in a relationship, and how he calls it like, I don't think he coined this, but he picked this up from some research that he did, this idea of the trust fund and how we can make deposits of trust and like withdrawals of trust within a relationship. And just kind of like being mindful of when that happens within your dynamic. So, maybe you bring, something very vulnerable to a friend, and, they start, and their response is talking about themselves and kind of like bringing it back to themselves and not really listening, and or just providing a space that feels like safe and secure to open up like that. That could be like a withdrawal from that trust fund. And just how are we depositing into that in our relationships? Like, what does that look like? And I think in the past, like, I haven't realized what it was about certain relationships that didn't make me feel totally able to be myself or comfortable. And it was that, if I'm reflective about it, it was the trust. It was like the trust that I could be any version of myself or any form of myself, the messy, the powerful, the confident, whatever. And there would be that like kind of unconditional love and support. So yeah, I thought that was a simple concept, but I was like, oh yeah, we're always.
I love that. I think I was thinking about the trust fund thing with my relationships. And I think what builds my trust in my relationships is consistency. And it's not about being perfect, because a lot of people that I know struggle, But the ones that I have broken trust with over time, they're struggling and they're making it outward and they're taking it out on me.
Yeah.
Like in a friendship, you know what I mean? Or, and not going in of like, oh, I'm realizing that this is something, or like I'm struggling with this. Like, and I guess it doesn't need, friends don't need to be perfect, but we've never once taken it out on each other, I don't think. Or maybe we did. I don't know. I think we were always.
I feel like we have enough self-awareness that like, even if in the moment we took it out on each other, it was like very quickly, I don't even have one in mind, but like, I'm sure
we have.
In the early days.
Yeah. But it's like, I have two friends that feel unsafe because they just feel like they're a little untethered to self. And so they're like, parts are just a little bit like.
Yes. And not taking responsibility for what they're bringing to the dynamic.
Exactly. So if it's an attitude.
What's so frustrating.
If it's like talking shit about people or like whatever the thing is, you're just like, that doesn't feel safe to me.
Totally. I become allergic if people are not like, self-contained is the wrong word.
That's it's a great one.
Would you
self-contained is great.
Okay.
That's great.
It's not even, because self-contained might sound like, they're
put
together and like,
they're gonna burst at the seams, literally.
But it's more so like you're able to run your energy,
yes,
and not fucking vomit all over everyone that you're with.
No, 100%.
The last thing that, we talked about a lot, but the last thing that I thought was really interesting was this idea of generous assumptions. In any moment, in a relational dynamic, what is the most generous assumption I can make about this person, this situation? It's I think runs parallel to like positive thinking. Like, what's the best case scenario? Kind of that.
It's like Don Miguel Ruiz before.
So I just feel like, in relationships, they are so nuanced and complicated, and there's layers to it, especially if you've been in a relationship with this person for a long time, and we can quickly make assumptions about a person based on what we know, quote unquote.
Totally.
But it's kind of that curious mind of like, what's the most generous assumption I can make about what this person is bringing to this like dynamic today?
Yep.
And moving from there rather than, the most negative.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I think I was trying to think of generous assumptions with people. I think I had to move into that recently. I have had to like, with those two people, I'm like, I've had to try to find my own generous. Yeah. Like, where can I be clear about where I'm at and what's working for me and what's not? And then where can I be generous in my assumptions too?
I know.
About like, this person is like deeply loving. Like, there's so much I love about them. Both. I don't expect perfection, but an understanding that they're going through stuff.
Yeah, and I think the generous assumption can be, it doesn't mean, abandoning yourself. It's more like, I can assume that this person is doing their best with what they know right now and they're moving through a lot. That doesn't mean you need to like be full on with them. I think that I've had to like be very discerning about that.
Yeah.
Like, I can kind of love people from a distance if there's a little funk going on between us, you know, where it's like I can make a generous assumption and also create a little boundary in space.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But anyway, Jared Weiss, he has a new Audible original out, The Magic of Tiny Moments. You can listen to this now. And this is just basically a culmination of his work over many years, working with thousands of people, talking to them, interviewing them about their relationships. He traveled the country, staying with, very regular people in small towns to like experts and professionals, and has just kind of whittled down this like very clear, very beautiful, very warm way of looking at our relationships. And I think it comes at a time, we were talking just about how most of us like very much value or prioritize convenience over connection.
Yes.
So it's, this is something that does take work, does take practice, and does take intention and thoughtfulness. But I do think we need to like balance that with the convenience factor of our lives right now. You know, we have the ability to connect so quick on our phones and have our heads down when we're like in community and walking around. So, I don't think we can avoid technology or any of that convenience, but I do think that we can balance it.
I'm a connection addict, dude.
Yeah, you are.
I need like help. I need the connection recovery. I'm like, I need more like technology in my
Silence.
face. Yeah, dude. Because I'm like, who can I connect with? I'm looking in everyone's eyes for like 4 minutes.
We hope you enjoyed this one. And just to all of you, thank you so much for your support of the book. It's
Yeah,
just
we
been
love
so
you guys.
incredible.
Thanks for
Thank
making
you.
our dreams come true.
Truly. If you haven't bought the book yet, it's at almost30.com/book, anywhere books are sold. We just really appreciate your support. And we truly believe that this book is going to be such a warm support, such a resource for you as you navigate change, whether in your late 20s, into your 30s, or really any season of change.
We love you guys. We'll see you on the other side. Enjoy.
During my pregnancy, a couple years ago, I realized how easy it is to feel like an afterthought when it comes to health. So many products out there aren't even clinically tested, yet they're meant to support one of the most important phases of life. And that's why I chose Ritual. So Ritual is essential prenatal, which I'm taking right now. I am not pregnant currently, but it's always great to start your prenatal prior to pregnancy. It's the #1 best-selling prenatal and the only leading prenatal backed by its own human clinical trial. Very important. That 24-week trial showed it helped deliver key nutrients like folate, biotin, and vitamin D. And even more incredible, moms taking Ritual had a lower overall cortisol level during pregnancy compared to those taking a leading prenatal. Personally, I found it to be easier to take than others I tried. If you know, you know. Sometimes in pregnancy, it can be anytime during pregnancy, but mine was during the first trimester, I was nauseous. And so the fact that these are gentle on my stomach, easy to swallow, and just a better overall experience, it has like a citrus essence that just makes it taste better. I was thrilled. And I trust Ritual because of their commitment to evidence-based support and bioavailable nutrients like methylated folate, very important, and they're designed for optimal absorption. It's also HSA FSA eligible, which means saving at checkout with pre-tax dollars was seamless. So don't settle for less than evidence-based support. Get 25% off your first month at ritual.com/almost30. Start Ritual or add Essential Prenatal to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/almost30 for 25% off. You know how we turn to the funniest places for advice, like the barista who knows your latte order better than your life story, or a random stranger in the bathroom line who suddenly becomes your therapist for 5 minutes. Definitely done it. We all have. It's sweet. It's like a sweet thing about humanity. And while those combos can be fun, when it comes to things like anxiety, relationships, or deeper life stuff, you kind of want someone who's actually trained to help. That's where BetterHelp comes in. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 5 million people served globally, they've been helping people find their right match for over 10 years. In fact, they've got a 4.9 rating out of 1.7 million client session reviews. And the best part, they do the matching work for you with a quick questionnaire. And if you're not vibing with your therapist, you can switch at any time. No extra cost. It's super, super easy. I think about it this way. I go to friends for laughs and vent sessions, but I go to a therapist for real support and tools. And having access online makes it that much easier to actually fit it into my life. A little busy over here. I'm sure you are too. But it is essential. Therapy has changed my life. I've been going to therapy every other week for, wow. It's been like 8 years total, but I'd say with my current therapist for 5 years, it's pretty, yeah. We need to celebrate our anniversary. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse range of expertise. So find the one with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/almost30. That's betterhelp.com/almost30.
Did you record it here?
I recorded it at Audible's like headquarters,
Yeah.
which is in Jersey City.
Cool.
But I had to drive down and stay there for 3 days, and that was it.
It sounds amazing.
It was pretty smooth.
But I'm just curious about that process.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot. You're talking for 8 hours a day. Damn.
Yeah. And then like reading your writing, was that hard?
I think that the hardest part of that was that, well, there's two things. One, the written word and the spoken word are sometimes very different. If you ask me to write a speech, it would be very different. I wrote it as a book and meant to be read, not necessarily listened to. And so there's the speaking it in a way that feels oratorical and feels like it's a talk, which is very slow and methodical. that's the first thing. The second thing is the book is like got a ton of research and has a lot of stories, and knowing people's names in terms of how to spell them is not the same as knowing how to pronounce them. So like, you know, you're like there and now you also have to nail the pronunciation. And so it was kind of a fascinating journey that they have this little like search engine. I can't remember what it was, but they get to a person's name and it searches basically all of YouTube and like all podcasts and everything for where that person's name would have been spoken out loud, and pulls up recordings of people saying that person's name so that you can make sure that you say it correctly. So like for people that would have those kinds of recordings, professors, thought leaders, et cetera, who have media online, it's interesting. But like I'm sitting there like texting people who like I interviewed in Africa 6 years ago, and I'm like,
I see. Yes,
Douglas,
yes,
how
yes.
do I pronounce the name of your village? Like I just don't, I don't know how to say this.
Totally. Wow.
You know, so that was fun. But I worked with a great team, and it was, you know, it was really cool. It's preserved forever now.
Yeah, it's really, I'm just getting back into audiobooks.
Yeah.
So this is my like second book in the last couple months. And I found like a new love for just audio listening.
Yeah.
And that's coming from a podcaster who probably should be listening to more podcasts than she does.
Sure.
But yeah, this book came at the right time for me, and we can talk more about that in a little bit. But I would love to just kind of like set our conversation or ground it in the inspiration or the experiences that you intentionally and unintentionally had that inspired this book. I was a part of one of them many years ago, or I was kind of like a viewer, sort of a part of it. And it was just really deeply impactful for me and my husband. But I would love to start there just to set us up.
Sure. In 2016, I went through a pretty heartbreaking breakup.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a breakup that, you know, it was like two people who really loved each other. There was not like some big giant betrayal of trust. We had been together for a few years, but I think that like we just had different visions of the future,
Mm-hmm.
and it was time to let it go. And I think that it was pretty devastating. And at the end of it, though, I had said to her, like, how could I have done better in this relationship? And so she ended up giving me a Google Doc that was
I love it. And also, ow.
well, it was 4 pages long.
Oh, okay.
Single space.
Okay.
And it was like pretty shocking how the things that she mentioned were like things like that time we went to that party and you gave that person a gift that was from us and you said it was from you.
Mm-hmm.
That time, like, you shut down your sister-in-law when she was telling you a story. And I think that, like, there were never any of these, like, profound betrayals. Like, nobody cheated, nobody lied, nobody stole, nobody was violent, nobody.
Right.
But it was like this accumulation of, like, tiny things that I think slowly just chipped away at our relationship until one day we found ourselves being like, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
And I think at the end of that, I think it was a very humbling moment for me. It was one of those things where I was like 34 and living in New York, and I just wanted to know a bit more about what other people were experiencing in relationships. And also I think that like the goal for me was like, how could I be better at relationships? And at the time, I don't know what that necessarily meant, but like, how could I be better at them? And so I gathered a group of friends for what I called a town hall about love, sex, and relationships. There were about, I don't even know, maybe a dozen of us in this little apartment on the Lower East Side. And everybody submitted questions and ideas of things they wanted to talk about. I'm like, how do I think the question I had post to the group was something along the lines of like, how can we be better partners to each other? And I think the question that the group voted to discuss was like, how do I introduce BDSM into my relationship, right? So like, I thought BDSM at the time was like shorthand for Buddhism. And
You're like, this is beautiful.
I was
Let's
really
talk
wrong. People are talking about shibari, the Japanese art of rope tying. And I'm like, wow. So I'm sitting on the edge of my seat and people are sharing stories. I never heard anybody share stories about their sex life in the way that this group was just very openly and candidly sharing. And I remember one person in particular shares this story in this group. And she tells a story about how she was in this relationship and they weren't having any sex and she wasn't really in love. And they ultimately got divorced. And then she met this other guy and it was the best relationship of her life. And then one day she's like reading, Esther Perel's, I forget the name of her book. She's got
Mating in Captivity?
Mating in Captivity. And she reads it and she's like, oh, maybe we should try something erotic. So she comes in one day and she says, maybe we should try something erotic. And he's open to it. And he had never explored anything erotic. And she tells this whole story and we're all sitting there listening and we're like, oh my God. And then she says, we went to this like sex shop and we bought all these things. And next thing I know, I'm handcuffed to his kitchen table having the best sex of my life. And now we're all sitting there and I'm like, this is crazy. Why? Why was it the best sex of your life? And me being, I don't know if it's just being a person or being a male, or I'm like, was there a certain geometric configuration?
Talk to me about the position
that we can diagram. And she says, because I realized I had never trusted anybody more in my life. And I think it was just this revelatory moment for me where I was just like, I didn't think that was what she was going to say. And I think all of us were sitting there and it just introduced this concept of trust into the conversation that I think I just became, it was a inspiring moment for me to widen my aperture and consider what the real mechanics of building a sustainable, meaningful, nourishing relationship really looks like. And I think that created this stage where I started hosting these things regularly, and month after month, it went from 12 friends to 55 to 100. There would be 200 people at once a month. I started traveling the world, doing them at different conferences. A conference that I actually is where the first time I ever saw you in Santa Barbara. I did one there for a few hundred people. That was also revelatory. Meanwhile, the opening of this book tells the story actually of that very conference where I meet Nick and Catherine North, and they tell me this story about, his transition. And like that all happened in Santa Barbara, actually. So funnily enough.
Wow.
And in the end, it's like 6 years, it's 10,000 people across, 26 countries. Then during COVID, we brought it online. There's 1,000, 2,000 people logging in once a week to have these broad conversations. And in the midst of all this, where people are sharing stories of all kinds, I also did like a road trip across the country. I stayed in Airbnbs with I had never stayed in Airbnbs before with people who, I guess while the people are there, I've stayed in Airbnbs,
and they must nurture
somebody
the experience.
buys it and they buy the live, laugh, love sign, and then and you just hang.
They
out.
have someone manage it.
I'm staying in someone's home, and so I was staying in homes in from Seattle to Miami to Brooklyn. I stayed in people's homes and just sat there and would ask them. Got to interview them, and it was a pretty amazing journey that also led me to interviewing some of the foremost experts in so many different categories. It was just like a dive down the rabbit hole on what makes us good at relationships was the original question. I think the answer that I arrived at and what the book is about is the thing that makes us good at relationships, whatever they may be, whether they're relationships with a loved one or a perfect stranger you may bump into on the street, to your parents, your children, whoever, is knowing how to, the mechanics of earning, honoring, and offering trust.
Yeah.
And it transformed my life. It's been a wild ride. So here we are.
Yeah, it's really, I think, refreshing and inspiring just to hear that in-person, intimate conversations that have revealed this truth. And it's just a reminder too that like that's where I think we're missing out when we're on our phones, where we're depending so much on like the digital part of our lives, where we're missing out on just these nuances of connection. And I think that's partly where the magic of tiny moments, like where what it refers to is just being in those like what we think are mundane moments with people, and you pick up on maybe a little shift in their energy, or maybe some body language, or, a breath that they take, and maybe you can go a little bit deep. It's just, we're missing that. And so that's why I said earlier, this book for me is coming at the right time, because I am desiring, coming out of, now it's 5 years post-COVID, but like we've depended so much on the digital, on being, virtual with people, texting them, calling them, FaceTiming, great, and such a blessing. And I'm desiring that like real connection. And maybe it's my mom brain, maybe not, but it's like, I kind of forgot like what that means and how to build that. So I would love to talk about trust, because I think we can think about it and be like, yeah, I know how to build trust. Like you do this, this, and this. Like actually don't think people understand the nuance of trust and how you build it with particular people. You talk about the trust fund and just how that works, depositing and withdrawing. Can you talk about that concept, what you learned from the Gottmans? Because
Sure.
I thought that was really, really interesting.
Yeah. So ultimately, a lot of research shows that our relationships are really these collections of tiny moments in which we have either made each other feel safe, known, and loved, or we have not. And these moments are very small. There are moments where we're sitting at the table together and you're checking your phone and not listening to me. And I don't consciously in the moment say like, I feel unsafe, unknown, and unloved, but it does register somewhere that this person is not fully with us right now.
Yes.
Or when I say, oh my God, I just like went to this cafe that's so beautiful inside, and it just falls upon no ears, and it seems as though like the person I'm talking to doesn't even acknowledge me, right? Or they say something like, oh, that cafe, I went there, I didn't like it at all, right? There's these moments, these interactions that they're so fluid and they're so frequent that they become ubiquitous and in some ways invisible. But it turns out that as these moments emerge, the way we respond to them, i.e. either do we respond in a way that makes the other person feel safe, known, and loved, or we don't, it really has like a meaningful short-term and long-term impact on the relationship in our lives. Because what happens in that moment is we earn a little bit of trust or we lose a little bit of trust. And so Gottman has this concept that I believe he referred to it as a trust bank. Or no, he refers to it as an emotional bank account. I think of it as a trust fund because to me, trust is, it's just the currency. It's like, it's very clearly, it has an emotional component, but trust is not even something that we are like, we can't necessarily see it as it's going like, oh, I trust that person a little bit less. I trust that person a little bit more, but it's like a feeling. It's like, I always say, like, it's surprising who you end up inviting to your birthday party each year. And it's also surprising who comes, right? You're always like, oh, wow. Like these are like, I didn't know. Like we get these little moments where the reveal is like how much trust has really accrued in these funds and who's really showing up and who's not. And so I think that like, we tend to think of trust as something we earn in these like really big moments, you know, like somebody showed up for me when I got hit by a car, somebody somebody stole from me, somebody cheated on me, somebody asked me to marry them. Like this is when trust was built. But it's really I like to say that the big moments reveal where we are, but the tiny moments reveal how we got there, right? And it's like, it's those little moments where like, when I call, this person answers. When I text, they text back. When I tell them I thought this movie was fun, they ask me why. They like, it's about the subtle engagements we have with people. And in those engagements, when we turn towards them in a way that makes them feel safe, known, and loved, they inherently trust us a bit more. And in that, it means that like our threat detection system goes down a little bit. We're less concerned about what, around what they think of us. We're less concerned about the quality of our hair. It's like, I think that's a funny thing for me to say, but I think that's, trust is something that, my favorite definition of trust is from Oxford. Oh my God, what is her name? Rachel Botsman from Oxford. She's a brilliant book called Who Can You Trust? And she defines trust as a confident relationship with the unknown. It's this idea that I don't know what's going to happen in the future moment, but I trust that I'm going to be okay, right? Trust is the bridge that gets us from the present moment to the future moment, like gracefully.
Yeah.
And it turns out that we just earn that, not in these big grand gestures of loyalty or lose it in these big moments of betrayal, but in these tiny moments where we just turn towards people and make them feel like they are safe, known, and loved.
When it comes to wellness, I'm a little bit of both. I love my cozy, familiar routines, but I also get excited when something fresh and new comes along, I love to test it out. And that's exactly how I felt when I tried Kachava's new strawberry flavor. I was like, strawberry, really? But it is so good. It's bursting with real freeze-dried strawberry, and it tastes like summer in a glass. And I just love a fresh strawberry taste. Sweet, fresh, and actually nourishing. So what I love about Kachava is that it's not just a protein shake, it's a whole body meal. Each shake has 25 grams of plant-based protein, 6 grams of fiber, and 85 plus superfoods, nutrients, and plant-based ingredients. Think adaptogens, antioxidants, greens, omega-3s, basically all the good stuff your mind and body crave. It is also ridiculously easy too. I throw 2 scoops in the blender with almond milk or regular milk and maybe some frozen banana. And in under a minute, I've got this creamy filling shape that keeps me energized and satisfied for hours. So whether it's breakfast on a busy day, a quick lunch between calls, or something to refuel after a workout, Kachava fits right in. And honestly, tastes amazing. So the strawberry, I'm loving. It's really next level, but I also love their classic flavors like chocolate, vanilla, and matcha. There are no artificial flavors, no weird aftertaste, just pure goodness. You've never tasted strawberry like this, so try the new one. Go to kachava.com and use code almost30 for 15% off your next order. That's KACHAVA.com. Use code almost30 for 15% off. Okay, so let me paint the picture. Growing up, my comfort foods were always the same. Okay, I remember them vividly. Warm Hawaiian rolls at family dinners, a bagel on a Sunday morning slathered in cream cheese, and of course, giant bowls of noodles. I loved this like cheesy sauce that I used to get at the grocery store. But the problem is, as I got older, those foods didn't always love me back. That's why I am obsessed with Hero Bread. It lets me keep my favorites without the sacrifice, and my family loves them too. Their Hawaiian rolls are my number one. They're soft and pillowy, exactly how I remember them. Delicious. Their bagels, so good. My son also loves them. And these products have 17 to 19 grams of protein with only 1 gram of net carbs per serving. I am blown away. And now, Hero noodles, they're here. Honestly, been a game changer. They've got 12 grams of protein, 5 grams of net carbs, 0 grams of sugar, and 32 grams of fiber, plus 60% fewer calories than typical noodles out there, which means yes, pasta night is officially back in rotation over here. And no one at the table can even tell the difference. My husband did not tell the difference. What surprised me most is the texture. I thought healthier bread or noodles would taste dense or cardboardy, but Hero Bread is fluffy and chewy and satisfying. The noodles are yummy. It feels indulgent, but it totally fits with my health goals, whether that's more protein, more fiber, which I am on a fiber kick, or just having meals that are incredible and also healthy. And they don't just have typical bread. They have tortillas, bagels, dinner rolls. And they have exciting drops, like batch drops, like the 2 gram net carb croissant, which, I'm speechless over these. I got to try them once, and now it has a 23,000 person wait list. Okay. I'm signed up for the next one. The bottom line is hero bread means no compromises, just delicious bread, rolls, tortillas, bagels, and now noodles that give me everything I love about my comfort foods, but with 0 grams of sugar, high fiber, and ultra low net carbs. Hero Bread is offering 10% off your order. Just go to hero.co. That's hero.co, hero.co, and use the code almost30 at checkout.
Yeah, it's a profound shift in perspective because I think, and I've been here, especially in like the early days of my relationship with Sean, I was so focused on these big moments, you know, like just making them count and what they meant and like how it defined us. And now we're both just very aware of what you're talking about, just these tiny moments. And we're getting better and better. Some days, you know, we're better than others, but of detecting, you know, what was that? You know, tell me more about how you're feeling. I want to get into the emotional vocabulary because I thought that was a really interesting part of this book. But I think it's important that we are not so distracted, are not so in our heads, are in our bodies, and are as much as we can in the moment so that we can feel this moment and the tiny moments happening. So I guess in your experience, maybe personal or in your interviews with people, what is preventing us from being able to recognize and be actually living in these tiny moments?
Wow. Okay. So I would say that one of the things that I think really transformed my journey in sort of diving deep into trust and the mechanics of trust was understanding what I like to call the tiny moment loop, right? Which is like the architecture of virtually every interaction we have with anyone. So whether it's me and you right now, or you and your son, or, you know, me and a person that I'm going to sit next to on Amtrak today, right? So every tiny moment has a feedback loop in which someone makes a bid for connection. Just, it could be anything. Is somebody sitting here? You ask a question, whatever the bid is, I would like to share a moment with you. And then in that moment, the receiver of that bid makes an assumption, and the quality of those assumptions are either generous or ungenerous. So generous is like, oh, this person is asking for a seat because they'd like to sit down and they're a patron of this train and they deserve that and they're probably a good person and great, right? Or an ungenerous assumption, which is like, oh, this person is just like wants to sit next to me because like they know that like I'm going to be hanging out with Lindsey today and they're just trying to like, you know, find out how they can get to Lindsey and ultimately, you know, get on the pod. So like whatever the ungenerous assumption is, right? And then based on the quality of our assumption, the third part of the loop is we respond and we either turn towards, turn away, or turn against that bid for connection, right? Understanding that loop is critical if, you know, when we return to the question, like, how do we bring our awareness to these tiny moments, right? Well, we'd have to bring our awareness first to like the genesis of every tiny moment, which is a bid for connection.
Yeah.
We'd have to understand the concept of bids. You know, one thing that we've done in our family, that I've done in my businesses, that I've done with people, is I introduce the concept of bids and say, like, this is what a bid is. A bid could be verbal, nonverbal. It can be physical. It can be a gesture. It could be a facial expression. It could be, you know, they could be direct. They could be indirect. You know, in the book, we cover all of this stuff. But like, it's really bringing to the forefront this concept that like once you can spot bids and you have a concept for them, then you can identify when the cycle has begun, and you'll find yourself, you'll be noticing them everywhere all the time. You know, a good way to practice is also like watching movies or listening to podcasts or anything and spotting the bids as they come up and being able to name them, you know? So I think that like one of the main tools in being able to be more present is just honestly having the concept of the tiny moment loop and knowing that like in every interaction, somebody makes a bid, somebody makes an assumption and then responds. And then based on the quality of that response, the other person either bids again or they do not, right? And when we really understand the architecture of that, it's really easy to bring your awareness to it, right? So I would say that's the first thing, is like understanding that concept in and of itself is a revelation.
Yes.
And then the other thing is that, like, you know, I think that in order to be aware of those bids, we would have to do the inconvenient thing, which is pay attention, right? And that's the part that is most challenging for all of us today, is that we are just probably the most distracted cohort of people like ever to exist. You know, when your friend tells you a story, but you're like low key on your phone, you're missing like this really potent, viable, magical opportunity to earn their trust.
Yeah.
And you're letting it slip away, you know? And I think that, like, if anything, the work has made me realize how often I have been doing that in my life. And it's like, it's brought to the forefront of my consciousness. Like, what are you doing? And honestly, nothing has brought that into more focus than parenthood.
Oh, yeah.
Because all children do all day
Yes.
is bid for connection.
Yes.
They're just like 100% bidding 100% of the time.
Yes.
And at that stage, it's just like turning towards constantly making that generous assumption. And sometimes it's, you know, if it's at the end of the day and you're tired and you're hungry and you're burnt out, sometimes like ungenerous assumptions, even about toddlers, creep in, like pretty serious ones. And like, I think that it's just about really bringing into our consciousness, like, that was a bid for connection. I am at a fork in the road where I can either make a generous assumption and turn towards, or I can make an ungenerous assumption and turn away. And I think that I don't have a great hack for doing that other than introducing the concept to people and encouraging them to not only practice it, but also introduce it into their own relationships. I mean, it's hilarious. Like, Erin, I have friends that have since listened to the book, and also they've known me for years and they know the concepts. But like my friend Ben the other day, I got a text from him that just said, bid, like, I'm reading recursion. I need you to read this book. It's crazy. You know what I mean? Yes. And it's just like so blatant.
Yes.
And I think that, like, I've been deep in this material for a while, so I know that's a bid. But for Ben, I think that's a really powerful way to reinforce what he wants to do and say, like, dude, I'm not just saying I like this book. I'm saying, like, I want to talk to you about it, so I'd love if you could read it, right? And so that's, you know, I think that, you know, we're very distracted, and we also don't have concepts for these things. We don't really understand the potency of these tiny moments and how they really work, you know?
That's what I was going to say. Like, I think this is revolutionary, like, in our relationships, to be able to identify these moments where, and it could even, it like really tugs at my heart when you say, like, they're bidding for connection. You know, it's like, that is just so pure and so human nature, yet we forget and we assume that it's because of, you know, they're inconsiderate, they're annoying, you know, like, we kind of label what it is. And I think perhaps the learning curve for me in some of my relationships on identifying the bid for connection has been that it's not obvious at all. It's like, it comes out as almost, it seems like they're not wanting to connect, but it's really they're wanting to connect. Can you give me an example of that? Because I can't really articulate one of my own right now, but I know it's happened many times in my life where I realize after the fact, oh my God, they just wanted to, like, be connected to me. But it's coming out as what seems to be the complete opposite.
Sure. So, you know, I think most people, I shouldn't say most people, but many people are very familiar with Gary Chapman's The 5 Love Languages, right? And people can speak a little bit about what their love languages are and how they communicate, you know, those feelings. With bidding, I think that I found that there are at a high level 3 different bidding styles, right? So there's 3 different flavors of bids. So your first bid is like a direct bid. It's like, Lindsey, I want to get coffee with you.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, Jared wants to get coffee with me. Done, right? Those bids are great. Those bids are easy.
Yeah,
those bids are a layup, right? Those bids are incredibly vulnerable.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So making those kinds of bids requires a certain level of trust, not only in the relationship, but in oneself. And that's something I talk about a lot in the book, which is that like the ways we engage with other people are as much a reflection of the quality of the trust fund we have with them, as much as the trust fund we even have with ourselves, right? And some people are in a trust deficit, if not many people are in a trust deficit just internally with themselves. And so making direct bids about many things can be really challenging, right? So direct bids are great. They're easy to spot. I want to get coffee. Perfect, right? Then there's indirect bids. So indirect bids, from what I've gathered through my research in talking to people about their relationships and how they engage, indirect bids seem to be like a tool, a go-to tool for many of us in many contexts. And so an indirect bid would be like, you know, I think I'm going to get coffee later, right? I don't know what you're doing. I'm going to go to La Colombe real quick, right? It's like a gentle suggestion. I'm kind of letting you know where I'm going. Maybe you're going to pick up on it. Maybe you're not. That's like, there's something subtle there. In order to pick up on that, one, I think it's good to have like the concept of bidding, because it brings it to, you're like, oh, that's a bid. I see that, right? Yeah. But then the third one, which is really interesting, and I've encountered enough people in my life who bid this way, who are real intimates in my life too, which is called negative bidding. Negative bidding is so confusing.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Because it's so off-putting too. It's like somebody's negative bidding, and negative bidding is like, I'm going to go get coffee. You never get coffee with me, so I know you're probably not going to want to go, but I'm just letting you know that I'm going. Hey guys, I'm going to get coffee by myself again. See you later. Right?
Yeah.
Negative bidding. Feels a little aggressive, can sometimes be a little demeaning, can sometimes be a little domineering. Cry for help.
Yeah.
Right? Weird as the receiver, because you're like, that doesn't feel good at all. How do I find space to turn towards this? What is the generous assumption I can make about this, right? I think that like what you're referencing is a lot of the time, and it's relationship dependent, but we find ourselves navigating indirect bids and negative bids. And this is where attunement to not only ourselves and other people, but like the context in general is really, really important. You know, I think that it would be nice if we all lived in a world in which we could all just say, please touch me there. Please, you know what I mean? Like, but that's just not how we operate as a species. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of reasons for that. But I think that like becoming attuned to those bidding styles, and a bidding style is not global either. Like some people may be more direct bidders in this relationship and negative bidders in this relationship. The way we bid in a relationship is often determined by the quality of the trust fund in that relationship, right? I have a story in the book of a woman whose mom, like during COVID, was like the kind of person who was like, you know, she put on a dress and she's like, oh, I bought you that dress. You never wear it. I thought you'd just thrown it out. You never wear it. Right? You're making dinner. I know you wouldn't want to cook with me. That's why I just stayed in my room and I was reading. And her mom is constantly saying these things to her. And I remember asking her, I was like, how do you navigate that specifically during COVID? Like you're like stuck in this house. How do you do it? And she said, I forgive her every single time. And I think that there was such profound wisdom in that. Yeah. In that, like, if we really want to overcome those types of bids and really see them for what they are, which is this bid for connection. It's like, what I'm really saying is I want you to come have coffee with me. What I'm really saying is like, I'm sick of getting coffee by myself, right? It takes the ability to forgive in the moment, to attune, and it takes a lot of strength that, you know, we don't often or always have. But I think it starts by even being able to understand what's going on.
Yeah. You know, people think podcasting is just talking into a mic, but let me tell you, my brain does not shut off when I turn off the mic. Between planning episodes, researching topics, you know, just thinking about the business. Sometimes my sleep gets disturbed, and lately it has been, and I have been leaning on my Beam Dream Powder. It's incredible. I got introduced to Beam's Dream Powder last year, and my sleep has just been so phenomenal when I take it. Dream is an all-natural sleep blend made with science-backed ingredients like reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin, all designed to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. And unlike other sleep aids, there's no next day grogginess, just really deep sleep that helps you actually feel good in the morning. So since adding Dream to my routine, I am finally sleeping through the night, if my son lets me, without tossing and turning, without my mind running. I just wake up actually feeling refreshed, not groggy, not exhausted, just ready to take on the day. And I'm so thankful. And I'm not the only one. Beam has improved over 17.5 million nights of sleep, and 92% of users surveyed reported better sleep and waking up refreshed. And honestly, what I love most is Beam is an American company built and run right here. So when you support them, you're backing real people making great products the right way. Plus, for a limited time, Beam is giving our listeners their best offer yet, up to 40% off. Unbelievable. Try their best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time. Go to shopbeam.com/almost30 and use code almost30 at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/almost30 and use code almost30 at checkout for up to 40% off. In my 20s, I was just financially a little bit unwell. I can't tell you how many times I've been hit with random overdraft fees or had that moment of panic realizing a bill auto-drafted before my paycheck even cleared. My younger self would have loved Chime because it takes away so much of that stress. Chime understands that every dollar counts. That's why when you set up direct deposit through Chime, you can get access to fee-free features like free overdraft coverage, getting paid up to 2 days early, and more. Here's what I love most. Chime is banking done right. You can open a checking account with no monthly fees and no maintenance fees. With qualifying direct deposits, you're eligible for free overdraft up to $200 on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. And to date, Chime has spotted members over $30 billion. That is wild. Plus, you get access to over 47,000 fee-free ATMs. That's more than the top 3 national banks combined. For me, I love the daily balance updates and real-time alerts. They've totally changed the way I track my spending. I say that you must look at your finances. You must look at what you have nearly every day. I use Chime, and you should too. Work on your financial goals through Chime today. Open an account in 2 minutes at chime.com/almost30. That's chime.com/almost30. Chime feels like progress.
Chime is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. Members FDIC. Spot me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Timing depends on submission of payment file. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs. Bank ranking and number of ATMs according to U.S. News and World Report 2023. Chime checking account required.
I think some people want to skip the process because it can happen quicker and quicker, but it is a process. It is a practice, and I think relationships have taught me that there's no quick fix at all to anything that is coming up that feels challenging. I want to talk about the generous assumptions and non-generous assumptions. I love this concept because it's quite simple and we do it all the time. But one of the exercises you propose is making the most generous assumption. And yeah, sometimes my internal conversation is like, yeah, but is that true? So what is a generous assumption? Why should we be making the most generous assumption? What does that do for the quality of the experience in the moment, but also the relationship?
Sure. So I would say that the insight that I gained around generous assumptions is not necessarily like at a high level in broad strokes. It's like, give people the benefit of the doubt.
Sure.
Okay. Well, that's way easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
The question that I was interested in solving was, how do we make them? I think we can all agree that making generous assumptions is a great pathway to being a good person and living a good life. But it's really hard. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to make generous assumptions, depending on the quality of a trust fund in a relationship, depending on if there's been a serious infraction, depending on many things. And I think what I found is that our ability to make generous assumptions is related to a few things. The first one is the quality of our physiology at the time.
Yeah, this is interesting. I want to talk about
so
this.
there's this woman, Lisa Feldman Barrett, out of Northeastern University, who is a neuroscientist and a psychologist, and she has this really wonderful, compelling concept that she calls body budgeting. That your body, your brain is like the CFO of your body, and what it's doing all day is it's moving resources from one place to another. It's like, okay, we need more salt. We'd like more sugar here. We need more glucose over here. We got to move water over here. That's what your brain is doing. And if you ever have gotten up too fast and felt dizzy or lightheaded, it's because your brain had not yet allocated enough resources to your head to make sure that the blood flow is there so you would get up. So the brain didn't predict that you were going to get up. You weren't physically ready. And now it takes your body a few seconds to actually acclimate, right? So you're constantly, your body has to be in homeostasis. Your budget has to be balanced. What that looks like in practicality is that looks like you have to be fed. It's I call it the baby checklist. Am I hungry? Am I tired?
Yes.
Do I need to go to the bathroom? Am I hot? Am I cold? Do I need a hug? These are very basic housekeeping needs that we understand with children, do not understand with other people, and we don't really understand them with ourselves, right?
Totally.
The best expression of this is definitely hunger. You know what I mean? We understand if I haven't eaten and then somebody makes a pretty big request of me, my propensity to either reject them or lash out at them and respond in some way that is unkind is probably greater than if I've had a good meal, right? So I would say conceptually, generous assumptions is give the person the benefit of the doubt, but being able to do that starts with, I think, what most people would refer to as self-care. It refers to making sure that you're eating healthy, making sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure that you're doing the things that, keep you de-stressed. And that's a tall order in a world in which we're always soft working. We're spending, countless hours in front of glowing pieces of glass, where we've relegated our social relationships to a digital universe in which we're not having face-to-face engagement. And so we're kind of living in a context that is making us less likely to make more generous assumptions. So it's not really about just being a good person and being kind. It's about creating the conditions under which you're more likely to make generous assumptions than you're not.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I think that that's a huge part of it. And I would say that the other part of it is recognizing when we're making ungenerous assumptions and being able to articulate why, specifically as it relates to how we are feeling. Meaning when this research came to light in our household, I introduced this concept of being under-resourced, right? And so I could say to my wife, I don't know, can you check the garbage? Have we taken out the garbage? And she's like, I haven't gotten to it yet, or something like that, And she can say I'm a little under-resourced right now, so I don't know if I can respond to this the right way, right?
Yep.
But that kind of self-awareness around the reason I'm responding to you the way I am is because of my own personal housekeeping of what I need to do to take care of this thing is pretty powerful in a relationship.
100%.
Because we're often not aware of how of the way we feel, how the way we feel transforms what we see and how we see what we see. And so by introducing that concept, it can really transform the way we think about the assumptions we make.
Yes.
I have a story in the book about, I read this fascinating article about how the Dalai Lama gets super pissed sometimes. It's listen, we're all going to fly off the handle. We all make ungenerous assumptions. It's about how quickly can we recognize our ungenerous assumptions? If they lead to moments of turning against or away, how quickly can we repair? How aware are we of what underpins our generous assumptions? Whether it's our lack of, physical housekeeping, maybe we need a nap. Maybe it's, that there are other things going on that we're preoccupied with and we haven't articulated our boundaries yet. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that. But I would say that the generous assumption question is one in which it's like, it's less about like, how do you make a generous assumption? It's more about like, how do you create the conditions by which you're more likely to make generous assumptions?
Yes. I'm obsessed with this because I feel like motherhood has been such a mirror for this, where, for example, Mav for a period of time was not sleeping very well. And so my sleep was affected, obviously. And, I was a different person during the day, and I didn't love certain aspects of the person I was, whether it was impatient, I'd be snappy, I would just be unreasonable in my expectations for myself or for other people. It was just a long list. And once I started to articulate this out loud, just like, my night was gnarly, in so many words, I'm feeling under-resourced, and either I need a little grace, or I would love to figure out how today I can kind of fill my cup a little bit just to get back to close to homeostasis. It was really helpful for my husband in particular to understand like how I was just depleted and how it was affecting me in relationship. Because now, yes, we speak it, but now it's kind of this felt sense as well, because we're living in the same house. So we kind of understand the various things that could be pulling from our resources. And it's been game changing. And I'm still in the process of figuring out as a parent, like how I properly fill my cup so that I am more patient, I am more present. And I'm also realizing how it's translating in my friendships, in my professional relationships. And it's just, I love this concept of kind of getting to the basics, the necessities of what makes us feel well, both in body, in mind, in the emotional body, because it really, really matters.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us are operating at not great and having really high expectations of ourselves or high expectations of other people. And it's a little distorted because of what's happening like physiologically and mentally.
Yeah, I would say that the two things that come up for me around that, the first one is that I think that we tend to think a lot about self-care through the lens of like, take better care of yourself, you'll live longer, you'll have better skin, you'll feel better, you'll have better sex, you'll be more focused on the projects that you want to work on. Here was a revelation for me. Like, take care of yourself and you'll have more friends.
Yeah.
You'll be a
better
nicer
relationships.
person.
Yeah.
You will build a higher trust community if you try to get sleep and eat foods that are good for your body.
Yeah.
I think that there is a direct line between self-care and thriving interpersonally. And so I think that, introducing that concept into the sort of greater conversation around taking care of ourselves, I think is really important to me. The other thing that I think is interesting is that like conceptually we understand, like, if you look at like your phone, for instance, if you looked at your phone, like sadly humans don't come with like battery indicators. I wish we did. I wish honestly I could show you and be like, I'm at 3%. I'm at 3% right now. Because
that might be in our future,
right?
To be
because
honest.
Totally, exactly. Right. But like the thing that I think is so fascinating is like you can look at your phone and if you've got like 2% and you get a FaceTime call from a friend,
you're like,
you can answer and go, listen, I can talk. My phone's going to die. Right. Because I understand like, in a general sense of like what this thing is capable of doing with the amount of juice it has, right? And I think that as we interact with other people, because we're not necessarily attuned to like where their battery is at, but even more importantly, we are often not attuned to where our battery is at, that becomes a thing where we can deeply personalize the quality of the interaction we have with them instead of most of the time just looking at it and seeing it for what it is, which is like a lot of us are living really distracted, long, overwhelming lives with more information in one day than the average person 100 years ago encountered in a lifetime. And like, it's just a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of like, if we want to make more generous assumptions, I think it's about, one, like taking better care of ourselves, and then two, about giving people grace and forgiving them and recognizing that, like, however they're responding to the present moment is oftentimes not completely rooted in whatever it is we're navigating.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so lately I've been giving my closet a little glow up, and honestly, Revolve has been my go-to for nearly all of it. It is just about to be the fall season, and I love that whether it's a night out, a wedding, or just my everyday run around the city, but still want to look put together vibe. Revolve has me covered. I have used them throughout our tours, interview processes. It's been just an incredible place for me to get looks that I feel confident in, that really like express my style in a unique way. And I love most how easy it is to shop on Revolve. The curated edits make it so simple to find exactly what I need without endless scrolling. That's the worst. Vacation looks, concert outfits, or even just elevated basics. Plus, they seriously have everything. Over 1,200 brands and over 100,000 styles with new arrivals daily. And the recommended for you picks are actually spot on with my style. I'm kind of freaked out. It's kind of cool. My current favorites, okay, I just want to give you like an insight into my cart, like what I just got. So I got I got the cropped sweater from Fear of God Essentials. It's like this really beautiful green color, great for fall. Nice big oversized sleeves, so cute. I also got the crew sweatshirt from WAO. It's just like a very simple basic, but I think I can like dress it up, dress it down, be my like kind of chic casual that I like. Oh, and I got the new Dunk Low sneaker from Nike. It's a cacao wow and coconut milk colors. Okay, so picture like that brown and cream. It is screaming fall. I'm so excited. So I am getting all of my wardrobe pieces this fall from Revolve, and I highly recommend. Okay, you are going to discover brands on Revolve, which I have many times over. I just discovered Helsa, which I love. I love Norma Kamali. She's on there. And guess what? Best part, whether it's a weekend getaway, a big night out, or just a little style refresh, your dream wardrobe is just one click away. It is so easy to shop on Revolve. Head to revolve.com/almost30. You can shop our edit and take 15% off your first order with code almost30. Fast 2-day shipping, easy returns, easy returns, which is awesome. And it's literally the only place you need to shop from. That's revolve.com/almost30 to shop our favorites and get 15% off your first order with code almost30. Offer ends October 12th. So happy shopping.
I had a revelation this morning when I was listening to the book, and I'm curious your thoughts on this. I'm not talking about clinical depression, but when people have periods of like a depressed episode or experience, I have them like where you just kind of the blues roll in, everything feels a little bit harder, but eventually it kind of passes. I want to start checking on how I am living these tiny moments and recognizing the positive in these tiny moments and seeing how that correlates with my blues. Because I notice when I'm in those seasons, I am so hyper focused on like these big picture things that might not be going my way, or I haven't done yet, or I haven't, finished this one thing I said I was going to, whatever it is. It's like big picture. And I am unable to, walk into my local coffee shop and really enjoy and engage in a conversation with the barista or, the person sitting next to me at a table. Like, so I want to be more observant of that and take note of that, because I have a theory that there's a connection there for me. So I'm curious what you feel, how you think about that.
So I think I'm really careful in talking about, depression or any other sort of, serious like mental health issues that people may be navigating. I have spoken to some of like the smartest people in the world on these subjects, and I certainly have stood on their shoulders to write this book, but I'm certainly not one of them.
Sure.
I do think that without understanding more acutely like what you're experiencing in these moments and like what else is going on in your life, I think a word that we like grossly misunderstand is loneliness and what it means to be lonely. And so loneliness, I found, is if feeling safe, known, and loved is what I've come to call the feeling of home. Only because across all of my research, whenever I ask people about their most trusted relationships, the word that came up most often was, I feel at home. I feel most at home with her. I feel most at home with myself. They really bring me, they bring me, I feel at home with this person. I think that home became this concept for like, I am feeling safe, known, and loved. On the other side of the spectrum, when we feel unsafe, unknown, or unloved, that is the foundation for loneliness. And we can feel lonely. Loneliness has nothing to do with, proximity to people. We can be lonely in our marriages. We can be lonely in our work partnerships. We can be sometimes lonely amongst friends, family, certainly at the Thanksgiving, table. And I think that when we experience those like feelings of disconnection, of hopelessness, and they don't have to be, protracted loneliness that gets, pretty severe. They could be, a few hours, a day or two. I think from what I've been able to gather, there is this relationship to feeling unsafe and unknown and unloved in a particular relationship. And that could just mean like I'm just out of touch. Like I haven't communicated with other people. I've been like in a perpetual feedback loop around something I'm working on. And like maybe it's time to invite somebody into that experience. It's like, I think that oftentimes we struggle with those things alone. And it's the idea that we don't feel like we have anybody in those moments that can send us into a spiral. So I would say that like, will going into a coffee shop help? Maybe. I think also maybe like calling a friend and inviting them to go with you is probably important, or like scheduling some sort of FaceTime with somebody, or, I think I tend to refer to that experience as like the lonely forest. It's like we kind of get lost in this like forest and we can't find a way out, but like, just as if you were in an actual forest, the way you'd find your way out is maybe you'd start calling for help. Maybe you'd hope to hear another voice. Maybe somebody would lead you out. And that's often how life is. We tend to think of lonely as a word that means like we have no friends or like we don't have anybody. But loneliness is a perceived state. It's not like something that we can measure acutely. It's something that like you ask somebody, do you feel lonely? And they either say like yes or no. It's just not like the same as like, is your leg broken?
Right.
And so I think that like as it relates to tiny moments, like loneliness creeps up when we haven't had enough tiny moments where we have felt safe, known, and loved.
Yeah.
And we kind of have to engineer our lives so that we can make those things happen, which is like another big piece of the book was like, how do we create the conditions by which we can engage with people on a regular basis, whether it's, creating some sort of regular way of texting with our friends. I have like a practice that I call high-low, in which I send my daily highs and lows to a few friends and they send theirs to me, and we do it every day, and we've been doing it for years. I remember interviewing the founders of Sunday Assembly, which is this like fascinating, it's very much like Touchpoint. It's basically like church without God. They gather every Sunday and there's music and there's like a TED Talk and there's all these different parts, but there's no religiosity to it. It's like the way to avoid those kind of like those low moments, but more specifically, like the consistent low moments is like by creating a culture of connection in your life.
Yeah.
You know, in which we're consistently creating the opportunities for these tiny moments, these tiny interactions in which we get the opportunity to earn trust and to offer trust perpetually.
Yeah. Can you give a couple other ways to create those positive tiny moments?
Sure. Yeah. I think that like, so at the end of the day, like the greatest metric for building relationships, you know, and there have been so many studies that have proven this, is just like quality time together.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's kind of it. It's why like making friends is so easy when we're young and so much harder when we're older and parents and working full time, right? And so because when we're together, the tiny moments just emerge. Somebody says, "Oh, I'm going to go to the bar and get something," or "What do you do? Should we order appetizers?" Or "What are you reading these days? Like, what book are you reading? What do you?" Right? We end up having these interactions just by nature of being in a physical space together, right? And so when we're young, like we are essentially in a physical space with other people all day long. And then we often share that space with the same group of people, you know, in some sense for like 18 years. And so it creates all this time for us to have these tiny moments. As adults, we don't have that same kind of, you know, engagement. And so we have to make time, like adult summer camps people go to, or people go to Burning Man, or people, you know, do different things to be able to create the context in which they can have dedicated time together, long weekends with friends over holidays, et cetera. I think that like figuring out how to build a social calendar that creates more time with people is just imperative to our physical and mental health. You know, like if you want to have more opportunities where you can create these tiny moments where there's a lot of bidding and a lot of generous assumptions and a lot of turning towards, and you're caught in that really, really productive, really nourishing feedback loop, then you have to be together. Yeah. And so what does that mean? It means like, you know, open up your home, invite your friends over, like look around your community to figure out where your community is gathering. I mean, this is kind of like, I mean, I think having kids was like really revelatory in the sense that like we moved upstate into this like obscure region where we knew nobody, and then our kid was like a calling card, and every parent is like, "Hi, you have one too?"
I know.
Oh my God, what's your number? You know what I mean? Like, but like that concept
nice.
though, right?
Yeah.
Like whether it's an athletic league or it's like you want to play Dungeons and Dragons, like. People are so wanting to gather today more than, you know, I think more than ever probably, in a sense that because we've been so fragmented. And like, you know, I just got an invite the other day to like somebody wants to gather all the people who are working remotely or from home in like my little small town at this cafe. And I think it's on like the 9th and I'm going to go, you know?
Love it.
It's like, I think that if we want to create more moments, then we have to find ways to consciously build more social engagement into our lives.
Yeah, I love that. It's just, I think we abide by our work calendar so much more than we put effort into designing social calendar, just like that type of fulfillment calendar. And it's just it's more important. It's more important. You know, I do better work when I have healthier and better connections with my friends, family, partner, my child. It's just it affects everything. Yeah. Everything is everything. What did I write down? Oh, this really surprised me, and I think people will be surprised by this and wonder how we can maintain these. But you were talking about just how personal communities play an important role, which we've been talking about. You said that you found that the number of stable relationships, I think this was in a study, someone can manage is 150 relationships. That seems like a lot to me.
Well,
is it?
Yeah. So it's,
and I know I know I would love to talk about the 4 circles and just kind of how this comes together.
Sure. So there's been quite a bit of research that shows that like primate brains are, you know, the size of our cerebral cortex essentially informs how many relationships we can maintain.
Sure.
Right. So 150 is like, those aren't like intimates. That's
Sure.
like, the person who works at the cafe by your apartment and their face and possibly their name, right? So it extends, throughout all of those different concentric circles. And so based on whereas like, let's just say like the brain of a fish cannot have as many stable relationships, right? And stable is just like, we know each other, we can identify each other, right? I think this is why things like social media, ultimately like Facebook and Instagram and all these things like challenge this concept, because they're like, now you can stay in touch with all 200,000 people you've ever met in your life ever. And they'll all start popping up at different times. And like, we can't hold on to all that information, right? So the idea is that our communities are organized around concentric circles that are determined by the quality of our trust funds. So the people that are closest to us are what we call our intimates. And these are the people that are like, there was a study that showed that like, regardless of how many people you're connected to on your phone, through social media, 80% of your text messages and phone calls are with 3 to 5 people. So like, these are the people that like you text like landed, like this is like, these are your intimates. They're the people who are probably your, emergency contacts. These are the people you call if something terrible happens. They're also the people that maybe are in your wedding. Like this is your ride or die crew, right? Those are your intimates. The next group out is a bit bigger. And like, these are your friends. And so by friends, it means that like they're not really as close as your intimates. And by close, I mean they're not as high trust. The trust funds really aren't as great, but like you feel really connected to them. They're probably definitely invited to your birthday party. Some of them are invited to like, you'd call if like a loved one dies. They're definitely coming to the barbecue. And you have that group of people. On the outside of friends, you have this next group, which are called your familiar faces. So familiar faces are your barista, the neighbor you see walking their dog every day, your partner's cousin who you've seen probably at a half a dozen family gatherings who you never really dropped in, but you know them, and like these are people who are like, you haven't really built a ton of trust with them, but they're like in your life. And you could identify them. And then the people who are farthest away from you, that are way beyond familiar faces, are what I call your foes. So these are people that you consciously are aware that you have a low trust relationship with, that this trust fund is overdrawn, and they do not make you feel safe, known, and loved. And the totality of all of those different circles is your community. And so the more people you have in that community, and how often you're bringing people in through that funnel of like people who start as familiar faces and then become friends, and then maybe, a very small percentage become intimates, like to make sure that that's constantly going, that there's people coming in, there's people getting closer, that you're making time for people at every single level. That is like the art and the science of constructing a high trust community, right? And I think the most fascinating part of the research is that all of these groups are really integral. So like, so often people think that it's just the intimates. It's like, you just need like that like couple ride or die friends and that like partner, and like you're all set. Like 100% those people are integral to your mental health. But it turns out that like, ironically, they can't be everything, right?
Yeah.
We need other friends. We need other people to be with, right? And those people serve, other purposes. It's not that they have to be so deep and intimate, but they're entertaining. They're fun. They introduce us to new things. The familiar faces section, that circle serves a very meaningful purpose. Those people have proven to change our lives, meaning because the people in familiar faces don't have the same, like, let's say like crossovers around like interests, places you've traveled. Like you'll tend to have a lot of crossover with your friends and your intimates around like where you've been, what you've done, what you do for a living. The people in the familiar faces, those are the people that are like, dude, you got to come to Burning Man. And you're like, what's Burning Man? And like, I can't tell you how many people have been to that experience and were invited in by a new person who just showed up in their lives. And we're like, oh, I have to go do this, right? Those are the people that introduce you to a book that you would have never read, that introduce you to a new conference that you can go to find a new job or to discover a new passion. It's like, familiar faces transform our lives. They're the people who throw the remote, workers hangout, in upstate New York. And like, I'm just going to go. I don't know these people and I don't know who I'm going to meet there. But like, those are the people that they take you directionally into places your intimates and your friends never could. And so, all of these different groups provide tremendous value, spiritually, emotionally, practically in our lives. And so finding ways on our calendars to say like, this is how I'm going to be with my intimates. I do high-low with like my ride or dies. Every day I send my daily highs and lows. I get theirs. It's an amazing practice. It's transformed my life. It's transformed the lives of everybody I've introduced the practice to. That's great, right? For friends, like in Brooklyn, we used to have something I called Park Slope Cinemas. We had this great apartment in Park Slope. And like every few weeks, like one friend in the chat could recommend a movie. And, I mean, I think, I don't remember what the statistic is, but like more than 60 or 70% of Netflix binging is done in private alone. That didn't used to be the case with like going to the movies with friends or watching things. It was much more of a social, habit. And so I started this years ago. We would have 20 friends come over and we'd all just watch a movie and like somebody would make snacks. And it was a whole thing that we created, and people would bring new friends. So like, that's like an opportunity for friends, for familiar faces. It is those like if you are a believer in, an organized religion, go to church, go to synagogue, pursue that path, find something like Sunday Assembly, join a basketball league, find a mom's group, like whatever it is, like we have to, if we want more connection in our lives, it has to show up on our calendars.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, that's honestly it. Like, there's not a good way around that. It just has to show up on our calendars. And I think then once you're in those moments and you understand the mechanics of like, that was a bid, how do I turn towards? How do I make a generous assumption? Then you have the opportunity to like really make it happen. But like, you do have to like, you got to show up. You got to you got to be in the arena.
Yeah. And it's the modern age. So like, we're going to fill our calendars with all the other things. And my husband's really good at this. He's teaching me so much. And I feel like you are an expert at this, but just how do we come together? It doesn't have to be this big thing, but it's like making the time, putting in the effort, sending the group text, getting it on the calendar, sending the calendar invite, like just making it happen. I have the habit of talking about it, wanting it to happen, but not actually putting it on the calendar. So I love that simple but really powerful point. Okay, I could talk to you for hours. I want to round out the conversation. I think someone can listen to what you're saying today and think, oh, his relationships must be on lock. Like he must be recognizing tiny moments every single day. Like just you got it. What are you working on right now in your relationships? Maybe in various parts of the concentric circles, but I would love to know.
Repair and forgiveness. I would say that one, like knowing these things and being able to apply them and practice them every day are
very different,
very far apart. I think that I miss bids every day. I make ungenerous assumptions every day. I think that a big part of the work is just understanding these concepts.
Yeah.
Because when we understand the concepts and we understand the architecture of these things, then like we can be accountable to them and we can work on them. So I would say that so I'm working on every part of this. Yeah. But the things that like are most present for me are definitely repair and forgiveness. So, it's like repair is it requires so much vulnerability, so much humility, and really like a profound capacity to see ourselves into the future. You know, like so often we can transgress in a tiny moment. It doesn't have to be a big deal. And like we just let it go. But like the truth is that by repairing that moment, like we're doing such a solid for our future selves, and for the relationship that we're in. And that's just something that I'm working on every day. And I think that like it is easier for me to work on it in my life specifically because I've introduced this material to everybody I love. So like it's really fun, like when like somebody I know and love is just like, you let me know when you're ready to repair. And I'm like, well, you know, I mean, so like that's kind of the benefit of like learning the material that like I would say like, you know, once you build relationships with these frameworks, you can like hold each other accountable to them. And so I would say the things that like I am constantly practicing are forgiveness and repair. And I think that like, I feel very grateful that at this point, like there are people in my life who are holding me accountable to those things. So I would say to anybody who's listening to this or watching this or listens to the book and is getting the vibe that like, I've got it all on lock. I do not. I have evidence of that. There are other people who can attest to that. But I'm trying.
Yeah.
And I think that like, I think that it goes back to the original question, which was, well, how do I get good at relationships? And I think that the answer that I've come to is we have to like stay committed to them.
Yeah.
And that commitment is really about like the commitment to like cooperating, right? It's a commitment to cooperation. I think that that's it. Like we're gonna miss bids. We're gonna turn away and against. We're gonna make ungenerous assumptions. We're not gonna repair on time or in the most elegant or graceful way. But like I'm committed to cooperating, and we're gonna get there.
Yeah.
And I think that like, you know,
that feels safe. That feels like I can trust you, even though it's not perfect.
And that's what it's like. That's been the work for me. And I guess as I like reflect on like the 4 pages of Single Spaced about my previous relationship years ago, and what that really taught me was like so often like there was a lack of commitment to cooperation, which ultimately led to the breakdown of trust.
Yep.
And so I think that that's it. I'm committed, imperfect and committed.
Love it.
That's where I would wrap up.
Thank you, Jared. You're the best.
Thank you so much for having me.
This was profound. So The Magic of Tiny Moments is available now on Audible. Highly recommend digging into an audiobook, y'all. It's really, it's a profound way to digest and metabolize these concepts. And for me, it's like, for some reason, it's easier to then practice in the moment. I have no idea why. This might be specific to me to have it like in my ear. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right, y'all. We'll see you on the next one. Bye. Thank you so much, Jared. You can follow Jared on Instagram at Jared Matthew Weiss. The Audible original is The Magic of Tiny Moments. You can download it now. Thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate you. Share this episode or any other Almost 30 episode with a friend. It's always a nice conversation starter. So good. It means a lot to us. Thank you so much for ordering our book, Almost 30, The Definitive Guide to a Life You Love for the Next Decade and Beyond.
All right, we got morning microdose for you. Instagram is Almost 30 Podcast, so is TikTok, and then YouTube. We will see you later. Bye.
Bye.